Hi, my name is Stephen Horne, and I would like to tell you today about one of my favorite tools for helping people to heal, and that is flower essences. Flower essences were developed by a homeopath, an English medical doctor named Dr. Edward Bach, and many of you have heard of the Bach flower remedies, and probably the most famous of the Bach flower remedies is a combination of 5 flowers called Rescue Remedy. Now, in the 1980s, Rescue Remedy was the only flower essence that I had really used. I had looked briefly at the other Bach flower remedies and had just not gotten into them. For some reason, I didn't relate to the English flowers. I didn't relate to why they were used for different problems or how they were used. But that all changed starting in the late 80s when I found this book by someone who's now one of my very good friends, Matthew Wood, called 7 Herbs, Plants as Teachers. Now, at the time, I'd gotten involved in doing emotional healing work with people, and I was looking for tools to aid me in this work because I had started to realize that many of people's health problems actually originate with unresolved trauma and abuse that they've suffered in childhood or at other times in their life that they need to work through and heal from. So when I read Matthew Wood's books, I really came away with a whole new insight about using plants energetically to help people work through their emotional problems and their mental blocks and heal on an entirely different level. Now, Matthew talked about a company called FES Services, Flower Essence Services in Nevada City, California. So I ordered their catalog and looked through their flower essences. And one of the things that really intrigued me was that these were flower essences made from many plants that I used as an herbalist in herbal medicine, but also many plants that I had identified in the wilds in my teens when I was out exploring and learning to identify various wildflowers and edible and medicinal plants. And so one of the particular flowers that caught my attention was yarrow. Yarrow was the first herb I had ever learned to identify. It was the first herb I tried to use medicinally when I was just a budding herbalist knowing next to nothing. And here was yarrow and a description of what yarrow did as a flower essence, and it was that it helped people who were overly empathetic, who were overly compassionate in a way, to the point that they felt responsible for fixing other people's problems for them. They were the consummate rescuer, if you will. And that was me. When I got involved with clients, I really took a big interest in trying to fix their problems for them and often felt kind of a little bit emotionally overwhelmed. Matthew says that yarrow is for the wounded warrior and also the wounded healer, and that's what I found many people who are in natural healing like me is they're healers who also have their own emotional wounds that make them very compassionate, but sometimes overly compassionate to the point that they neglect themselves in trying to help other people. So I took yarrow flower essence. It was the first flower essence besides Rescue Remedy I tried to use, and within a week or two, I noticed a dramatic change. I no longer felt responsible for other people's problems. Now, I could intellectually tell myself before that I wasn't responsible for other people's problems, but down here, emotionally in my heart, I felt responsible for other people's problems. And after taking that flower essence, this shift occurred where my head, this idea in my head I wasn't responsible, suddenly lined up with a feeling in my heart that I wasn't responsible. And I quit taking responsibility for other people's problems. I started allowing them to take responsibility for their own problems. So with that introduction, I began to use flower essences to help my clients and the people I was working with in emotional healing. And my staff at the time became very intrigued with the use of flower essences. So using the FES guide, the Flower Essence Repertory, which is a great book and one of my Bibles in flower essences, although I have many other books on them too, they would pick a guinea pig, a target person, that they would then kind of analyze and discuss and decide what flower does this person need, what flower essence would benefit them. And then they would make up that flower remedy and put it in an unmarked bottle and give it to that person and tell them, take this. And they wouldn't tell them what it was for, they wouldn't tell them what it was, they wouldn't tell him what it was supposed to do. Now that's not a double-blind study, because a double-blind study, the person administering the remedy doesn't know what it is either. But in this case, it was a blind study because the person taking it didn't know what it was or what it was for. And they got some really interesting results. For instance, they chose dandelion flower essence for the UPS driver because he always seemed so tense and uptight. And dandelion flower essence is for people who overstrive and overform their lives and take on more than they can handle, and it teaches them to learn to kind of relax and go with the flow. So they were afraid that he wouldn't remember to take it if they just gave him the bottle. So each day when he showed up in the morning to drop off packages, and in the afternoon when he showed up again to pick up packages, they would give him a dose of this flower essence, and not telling him again what it was or what it was supposed to do. On the third day of the experiment, he said, "Can I take that bottle with me?" He says, "Because every time I leave here, I feel so much more relaxed and at ease." Well, it was very interesting because every single person that they tried this experiment on had very similar results. They reported feeling changes that were very much what the flower essence book said those changes would be. The most dramatic for me was the woman I was married to at the time. Loved doing crafty projects, crocheting, painting, knitting, that kind of thing. But she had this habit of starting projects, getting about 70 to 80% through them, and then putting them down and starting something else, and never finishing the projects she started. So they picked a flower essence for her called Tansy, which is for procrastination and a lack of follow-through in what you start. And they gave it to her in an unmarked bottle, didn't tell her what it was or what it was for. I was blown away. I didn't know this until after the fact, but I noticed that after she started taking this flower essence, suddenly she picked up these projects that she had started 2 and 3 years earlier and finished them. And in a course of 2 weeks, she completed 3 or 4 projects that had been lying around for years unfinished. Well, I was sold, and I've been sold on flower essences ever since. I've had many marvelous healing experiences with using flower essences with my clients as part of their herbal and nutritional program and the lifestyle recommendations I make when I'm working with clients. But I do this to subtly introduce the idea that the mental and emotional component of our health is really important too, and to start working on that level without being too obtrusive with the person, and to get some shifts taking place. And I have seen marvelous shifts take place in myself and other people with flower essences, including members of my own family. So I will be teaching a class on flower essences and also some essential oils, because I've also used aromatherapy in my emotional healing work, and many of the uses of flowers that are used in aromatherapy, such as chamomile, are parallel their use as both an essential oil and a flower essence. So I'm going to talk somewhat about some of the essential oils that you can use for helping to facilitate emotional healing and make changes in people as well. So this class, which is called Flower Essences and Aromatherapy, will be starting in October. And I encourage you to visit our website and check it out if you'd like to learn more about these amazing tools called flower essences, and how you can use them to help yourself or other people to resolve their mental and emotional problems.